They loved you yesterday. Today they feel nothing. Not less, not complicated. Nothing. You didn't get a warning. You didn't get an explanation. You got silence. And a version of them that looked exactly the same but felt like a stranger. If you've ever been on the receiving end of that, the warmth just gone. The texts shorter. The plans cancelled. The person still physically present, but emotionally already somewhere you can't reach. You know exactly how disorienting that is. You spent weeks replaying every conversation, every dinner, every text, convinced you must have done something wrong, said something, changed something, been too much or not enough. If that ache just hit your chest, stay with me. Because what happened to you is not random. It is not mysterious. And it is not your fault. This is one of the most misunderstood patterns in modern relationships. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand it at a level most people never reach. The first thing you need to understand is that feelings don't just vanish. They follow a pattern, a predictable, documented psychological pattern. One that begins long before you ever notice anything is wrong. And that pattern has a name. It is called avoidant deactivation. When we are young, we learn what love feels like based on the people who raised us. If closeness came with unpredictability, if emotional intimacy felt like losing control, like being swallowed whole, the brain builds a defense system. As adults, that defense system activates automatically when a relationship starts getting too real, too close, too safe. The nervous system treats emotional intimacy like a threat, and it flips a switch. Suddenly, the person who loved you starts finding small flaws, starts feeling inexplicably irritated, starts convincing themselves they were never really sure about you at all. This is not a conscious choice. It happens below the level of awareness. They are not lying when they say they don't know what happened. Many of them genuinely don't. They were wired to run, and they ran, even if their feet never moved. In 2012, researchers at the University of California published findings in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that confirmed something remarkable. Avoidantly attached people do not just withdraw emotionally, they actively suppress positive memories of the relationship during the withdrawal process. It is not that the good moments disappear, it is that the brain deliberately buries them to make the exit feel justified. The brain needs a reason to leave, so it creates one, retroactively. Every laugh you shared, every quiet morning, every moment that felt real, still there. Just buried under a psychological defense that the person pulling away didn't consciously build and cannot consciously access. You were not erased because you didn't matter. You were buried because you mattered too much, and that terrified them. Stay with this. What comes in the next 2 minutes is the part most people never hear. There is a man most people have never heard of named John Bowlby. In the 1950s, Bowlby was working with children in post-war London. Children who had been separated from their parents during the evacuations of World War II. What he observed changed psychology forever. Children who had experienced inconsistent care, sometimes warmth, sometimes emotional unavailability, didn't just become anxious, they became avoidant. They learned to stop reaching. They learned to perform independence as a survival strategy. Bowlby called it the deactivation of the attachment system. 50 years later, we can measure this in adult relationships with clinical precision. The child who learned that closeness was dangerous becomes the adult who exits the moment love becomes real. The most painful losses are rarely caused by cruelty. They're caused by unhealed fear wearing the face of indifference. Think about the relationship that brought you to this video. Did the coldness come right after things got genuinely close? After a vulnerable conversation? After a moment where you both let your guard down? Did they go quiet instead of talking to you directly? Did you spend weeks convinced you had done something wrong, only to realize slowly that the story was never really about you? Did their withdrawal feel sudden? But looking back now, you can see the small signs that were always there. That is not coincidence. That is the pattern. The avoidance switch doesn't flip because you failed. It flips because you succeeded. You got close enough to trigger a fear that was formed long before you ever existed in their life. Here is the one thing that changes everything once you understand it. Stop asking what you did wrong. Start asking what they were afraid of. Not to excuse them, not to go back, but to end the loop your brain is running, the loop where you are the variable. And if you just find the right answer, the math will finally make sense. The math doesn't work that way. What actually helps is learning to recognize the early signals before the switch fully flips. The subtle pullback after a moment of real closeness, the sudden need for space right when things felt the most connected, the vague irritability that appears without a source. Those are not random. Those are the nervous system of an avoidantly attached person signaling that they have hit their intimacy threshold. You cannot love someone past that threshold, but you can choose, clearly, calmly, and with full information, what to do next. There is something underneath this pattern that most relationship content never touches. If you have found yourself repeatedly drawn to people who eventually pull away, who run right when things feel the most real, that is not bad luck. That is worth sitting with, because the love that feels most familiar is not always the love that is the healthiest. Sometimes the intensity of an avoidant connection feels like depth, feels like chemistry, feels like the realest thing you have ever experienced. But there is another kind of love, one that doesn't vanish when you get close, one where safety and desire exist in the same room at the same time. Understanding why feelings disappear is the first step toward recognizing what secure love actually feels like, and why, for so many people, it initially feels almost too calm to trust. That is exactly what we are going to examine next. Why secure love feels wrong to people who are used to anxious love, and what the nervous system is actually doing when it mistakes peace for disinterest. Complete this sentence and drop it in the comments below. When someone I loved pulled away, the story I told myself was one word, one phrase, whatever comes first. Drop it below. I read every single one.